It is Thursday, May 9th, 2024, and guess what? College football, even with the NIL happenings going on, even with all the conversation around the transfer portal and the G5 and the P4, it's still the greatest sport on the face of the planet. We're glad to have y'all with us. We have a ton to jump into, as we do every single Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on this very live show that airs 11 a.m. Eastern. Georgia's going to be different this year, man. I'm telling y'all, I think there's this thought out there that just because they have the same quarterback and same head coach and same OC and a lot of similar pieces from last year that we kind of have a good gauge for who they're going to be. I think Georgia's going to be another beast this year, and we'll talk about that. How good can Tennessee really be in 2024? Because the Nico show is about to start. Get your popcorn ready. Make sure you got a seat saved. But there's still a lot they have to do to be able to, I think, win the SEC and make the college football playoff. So how good can they really be? We'll unpack that together. The transfer portal is coming to a close. It's already closed, but a lot of those top names are already off the board to where I feel like the dust has settled, and we can kind of sit down together as a college football community here on the Hard Count and just kind of take a gauge for who has the best landing spot. Not necessarily who won the portal. We talked about that yesterday. But when it comes to fits for specific players, who were the best fits from this spring transfer portal? We'll talk about that together. Also, my favorite players in all of college football. I have broadcasted this a few times. Didn't go to journalism school. Never took a journalism course during undergrad. And so with that being the case, I don't have any ethics around, you can or can't have favorite players. Forget all that. We're college football fans. This whole thing is based on who our favorite players are. So not an all-exhaustive list, but we will talk through that here a little bit later in the show. Also, Andy Staples joining the show a little bit later. He and I both felt a little bit differently about Brian Kelly and the things he said about NIL. Andy feels like that should not have been something he said when it comes to saying we won't buy players. I have my own opinion on it. I think it's more than fine to say that NIL shouldn't be the leading cause of why you recruit a player. So Andy and I are going to have a very civil, very polite, very well-mannered, well-meaning discussion between two opposing viewpoints, and that'll be a little bit later in the show if Andy's internet is stable, because they got a little bit of weather out there in Gainesville, Florida. One more thing I want to talk about in this show. I had someone say on Twitter that they feel like Florida State is still underrated heading into 2024. Now, you could see why that might be because Jordan Travis is gone, Keon Coleman's gone. I mean, it feels like the majority of their team has gone to the NFL. But is Florida State underrated heading into this upcoming college football season? We'll discuss it together. We're so glad y'all are here. There's a million different things you could be doing right now. There is a lot of other sports that are actually playing games right now. But however, we are cut from the same cloth in the sense that when other games are being played, you're tuned into the transfer portal. You're tuning into other college football coverage. You're probably watching reruns of full games on YouTube like an absolute sicko, and that's what we support on this show. That's the kind of Kool-Aid we drink, so we're glad to have y'all here. Before we get rolling, a couple of things I'm going to ask you to do. First, subscribe to the channel. Really easy. Little button under your picture right there. Subscribe. That's massive. Second, if you're listening on podcast, subscribe to the podcast feed. It's easy. It's free. It keeps you dialed into all the things we got going on here. Lastly, I guess subscribe would be another word you could use, but follow me on all the social channels, okay? Instagram, Twitter, @JD the same handle over there. That's a great medium for us to interact when we're not live on the air right here. Can field your questions. We'll post stories on there to hear from y'all even more frequently. So bottom line, those are all the things we're going to ask you to do, and that's going to make sure that we operate in the most efficient manner possible on this show, getting you the college football content that you want. All right, so we appreciate you in advance for that. Let's get right to it, man. The transfer portal has more or less kind of come to a close. The window to enter your name into the portal has officially come and gone, or the deadline has passed, rather. Still some big names out there. Cormani McClain, we're going to see where he ends up. Tyler Barron, at the time of us being live, don't know where he's landing. But I think we've reached a point where enough of these big names are off the board to where we can kind of start to decipher, okay, who had the best landing spot? Like when it comes to fit, because I think fit in college football and football period is everything. The situation you're landing in, I think, is everything. Who were the best portal fits when it comes to this spring transfer portal window in 2024? I want to start out on the Plains, and Keandre Lambert-Smith from Auburn, I think, is landing in a perfect situation for him. There's some questions around Peyton Thorne and what he's going to be this upcoming season. I understand that. But Auburn, for what they needed some explosivity. Now, Cam Coleman's going to help in that effort, but Auburn last year, they had 6.3 yards a pass. It's good for 107th in the country. You got to be more explosive offensively. Have to believe Hugh Freeze is making an effort to do that in 2024. Keandre Lambert-Smith averaged 13 yards a catch last year. So bada bing, bada boom, you add some dynamite to the offense. That's a good deal. Now, the reason why it's a good fit for Keandre Lambert-Smith is because he is not going to be the centerpiece of this offense. Will he get a lot of footballs thrown his way? You better believe it. Have a funny feeling that Keandre Lambert-Smith wouldn't be going to Auburn if that wasn't communicated on the front end. But he's not going to be getting double coverage every other snap because, like I just mentioned, Cam Coleman, he's a real threat on the perimeter. You got Rivaldo Fairweather, a tight end who looks like a bionicle playing for them. He might line up in the slot, can line up at H. You can move him around. He's a real deal weapon for you as well. And so when defenses have to play against Auburn, they have, I think, 3 very real receiving threats at a minimum, not even counting the other young bucks that might elevate themselves this upcoming season for Auburn. And then also what they're going to do in the ground game and the RPO game, that's going to set them up for a lot of success. So Auburn, Keandre Lambert-Smith, handshake emoji, real good fit. I love that for both parties. Derek Harmon is a defensive lineman transfer from Michigan State. He's going to Oregon. We have been extremely high on him since he put his name back in the portal for this spring cycle. And I mentioned he's going to Oregon. That was a school he talked to during that winter period when he jumped in the portal that first time around. Oregon has got the edge defensive position taken care of. Like they got Mateo Uiagalelei on the outside. They got Jordan Birch on the outside. Both those dudes are going to get after the passer with a vengeance. Now, what that's going to do for Derek Harmon is you cannot feel good about giving him extra attention with how you dial up your blocking scheme and then feel good about protecting your quarterback with those two dudes coming off the edge. And so if you're doubling Mateo Uiagalelei, guess what? You have less guys to block Derek Harmon. Same thing can be said for Jordan Birch. So at the end of the day here, I understand that it's not going to be a situation where he's only getting one man blocking him every single down, but the fact that offensive lines have to scheme for all 3 of those cats and the rest of their defensive weapons they have there at Oregon, that's massive. It's a great fit for Oregon because they got a 6'5", 320-pound anchor now in the middle of that defense as they move into the Big Ten. I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's great for Derek Harmon. I think he'll flourish there, and I think Oregon's defensive line will be much better with him in the fold now and having some proven production there. Running back Damian Martinez to Miami was at Oregon State previously. He's a 2,000-yard back from his time at Oregon State over 2 seasons. The thing I love about the fit here for him at Miami is he is a north and south runner. And when you hear the name Shannon Dawson, you look at his resume, you say, okay, this guy's an air raid guy, right? He's been around a lot of air raid coaches. It's kind of the background for him. He's going to want to throw the football. Yes, he wants to throw the football, but also he wants to have a power kind of run game. To put it simply, in the power run scheme, you want to go forward. It's not a whole lot of getting lateral and running the speed sweep to the outside. Like, they'll have versions of that, but Damian Martinez is first team all downhill. They're going to play to that skill set for him in this offense. He's a smooth runner, but at the same time, I feel like he's a violent runner, which is exactly what is going to fit Shannon Dawson's scheme when they run the football. Also worth noting, Damian Martinez, as much as I think he's going to be a bell cow for them this upcoming season, he's going to get a pretty good picture in the box with the looks that he runs against. Like with Cam Ward playing quarterback, and they also added Sam Brown through the portal. They got Xavier Restrepo out there at wide receiver. They got a lot of pieces to still throw the ball effectively to where I think Miami offensively will be pretty dynamic and pretty balanced to where if you want to stack the box, more power to you, Cam Ward's going to throw it over your head. If you want to play the pass, well, then Damian Martinez is going to be able to eat you alive, like I just mentioned he's going to do in that power kind of run scheme. So the bottom line here is it's a great fit for Damian Martinez schematically, and it's a great fit for Miami in the sense that now you can keep defenses honest. Really, really good fit for all parties involved. Another really good fit that we're a fan of here, running back Dylan Edwards, transferred from Colorado back home to Kansas. He was committed to Kansas State at one point in time. He recommitted to Kansas State through the portal. Like I mentioned, he's already from the state of Kansas. He is playing in an offense where he is going to have the attention divided in the run game between him, Avery Johnson, and DJ Giddens. Now, DJ Giddens was quietly one of the better backs in all of America last year, ran for over 1,200 yards. And so when Dylan Edwards is back there with Avery Johnson can also scoot a little bit. Like, you worry about him on the quarterback design runs. You worry about him on the read option. You worry about him in an ad-lib situation. So in the situation where they're in the backfield together, defenses will have to commit a linebacker to give a little extra attention to if Avery Johnson pulls it. So at the end of the day here, there's just less attention given to you if you're Dylan Edwards That's a good thing. That makes for more space, makes for more opportunities for big plays. And then with DJ Giddens in that backfield with you as well, you're going to be able to have more fresh legs throughout the course of the season, have a little less wear and tear. I think it's a great deal. Also, the fact that he's going to be in an offense where he's played with that quarterback before at the youth level, you can't make this stuff up, man. That's modern college football. That is the transfer portal. Last one to get to here, and this is a more under-the-radar perfect fit in my mind because you won't probably see him play this year unless something horrific happens at Georgia. Jaden Rashada transferring from Arizona State to go to Georgia to sit a year is a perfect fit for all parties involved because Jaden Rashada transferring from ASU transferred there with the intention of, hey, I'm not ready to play yet. I need to develop. I need to sit a year. I need to figure out this whole college football thing. And then after a year or so, I'll compete for the job and have a chance to play at a really high level. If you want to develop, is there really a better situation than learning and playing in a pro-style offense under Mike Bobo? Multiple pro-style offense, I suppose, under Mike Bobo. Sitting behind who I believe could and potentially will be the best quarterback in all of college football in 2024. And oh, by the way, if you're taking reps with the twos or the threes you're on the scout team, whatever you're doing, if you're Jaden Rashada, you are doing it against future NFL players in what Georgia has on defense and with NFL players in what Georgia has on offense. So if you're Jaden Rashada, you want to develop, you pick the right place to do it, not even to mention the standards they have at Georgia and what they hold their entire locker room to with how you do practice, with how you study film, all those things. It's a professional organization dropped into college football run by Kirby Smart. And for Georgia, it's a massive advantage to them in the sense that, okay, well, we just added another talented arm to that quarterback room. This whole thing is driven off of competition. Gunnar Stockton, you want to win the job. Ryan Puglisi, you want to win the job. You got to go toe-to-toe with Jaden Rashada for it, who's also a really talented arm in his own right. So at the end of the day, Georgia, through competition, is going to get the best quarterback for the future. From having him in their room, it's going to benefit all parties involved. So those are kind of the best portal fits in my mind when you look at what we have here across the board from Derek Harmon at Oregon, Keandre Lambert-Smith to Auburn, Damian Martinez to Miami, Dylan Edwards to Kansas State, and Jaden Rashada to Georgia, as I just mentioned. Now, don't get it twisted. The portal, gosh, I keep thinking we're going to go a show without a cough. It hasn't happened yet. Hasn't happened frequently yet, at least, but oh well, the perfect game is gone. What I was saying, though, before I started coughing, before I was rudely interrupted, the portal still has some big names out there. I think for the most part, a lot of those guys that are going to be immediate contributors for you, or the guys that you would be after during the winter cycle if they were available, those guys are pretty much off the board. But nonetheless, keep an eye on the portal. Make sure you're following on all the On3 socials because we cover the portal, I would happen to believe, better than anybody else in the industry. Follow Pete Nakos, follow Steve Wiltfong, and you should be in the know when it comes to the transfer portal. So I mentioned Jaden Rashada in that last segment. And I can't help but feel like Georgia from last year to this year is just going to be a different beast. And I think it's important we have this conversation because I think nationally there's this thought that, okay, we kind of know who Georgia is. We kind of know what that team's going to be because Carson Beck is back. We saw him play last year. Kirby Smart, we know who he is as a head coach. Mike Bobo, the same OC. Glenn Schumann, the same DC. You know, you sprinkle in some new pieces on that staff, but for the most part, we kind of know what to expect from Georgia, right? Maybe, but I think the context within Georgia overall needs some more attention. Like, I think Georgia's offense could be better than last year. And that sounds funny to say out loud because last year they scored almost 40 points a game. I wouldn't be surprised if they were even more dynamic. Now, I don't know if that points per game number will be higher, but I just look at this roster and, like, they didn't turn Carson Beck loose, per Kirby Smart, really until the end of last year. Like, for the most part, they were kind of trying to ease him into it. It's his first time being a starting quarterback. A lot of big stages in the SEC. You know, kind of let him walk before he runs. But when Carson Beck was running, we saw what he's capable of doing. Against Kentucky, he threw for almost 400 yards. Like, there was not a moment last year where I looked at Carson Beck and said, yep, this stage is just too big for him. Even in the game against Alabama, did he have his best game of his career? No, but I thought he did more than enough to put them in position to win that game. Didn't happen, you call it what it is. But, like, overall, Georgia, with Carson Beck getting another year in the system to build off of last year, where he completed 70% of his passes. You give him another year with the same OC. Like, last year, I don't think you just copy and paste it this year. I think you copy and paste it and build upon it. That's scary now. That's scary. Like, Georgia could very well be an offensive-led football team. And I understand now you don't have the avatar That number 19 was playing for Georgia last year. That was the tight end. That was Brock Bowers. That was arguably the best player in college football, regardless of position. But at the same time, you didn't have him for a lot of last year. You definitely didn't have him for a lot of last year where he was 100% healthy. He gets dinged up against Vandy, and you're kind of trying to acclimate your offense to life without Brock Bowers. I look at the skill level across the board for Georgia on the offensive side of the ball. And no, you don't have the avatar that is Brock Bowers. But you still have, I think, a really high level of skill players from Dylan Bell to Colby Young to Trevor Etienne. Like the skill, I think the floor for the skilled players in Athens is higher than it was last season. You don't have Brock Bowers. I've said that multiple times, but still, I think that overall it's fair to expect that they can be every bit as dynamic, if not more dynamic, with all the weapons that Carson Beck has to choose from. Dominic Levitt, I didn't even mention him. Ra Thomas. Like, we could keep going here. The buzz that we heard during spring football, I would pay really close attention to, because there's always going to be different talking points that pop up once during a spring camp. But the talking points that we heard routinely pop up in Athens during Georgia spring ball was two things. One, the skill players. I just mentioned that. Second, the offensive line. Now, the offensive line at Georgia has been a staple of who they are, really since Kirby Smart has gotten there, in my opinion. But for them to be a talking point during spring football and say, yeah, hey, we feel good about them. Hey, we're in a really good place. Hey, I think we could be even better than we were last year, is kind of the feeling I get from them. That's dangerous. Like, that means something that you're hearing that as much, because last year Georgia was top 10 in the country in terms of yards per carry as a team. So to build on that, based on the buzz, they're going to be able to be super dynamic with Carson Beck throwing the ball to all these weapons, and then be able to pound the rock with Roderick Robinson, Trevor Etienne, that big offensive line. Like, I don't know how you defend Georgia offensively is what I want to make sure we get to here. Talked to Jake Rowe yesterday from Dogs HQ. He has a segment coming out on the On3 Roundtable YouTube channel, so subscribe to that. We got to talking, and he hit on something that we've mentioned on this show a couple of times. This year for Georgia, there's no fighting complacency. Another reason why I think Georgia is different this year compared to last year. Last year, they're saying, all right, how does Kirby Smart get his guys going? How does he find some motivation for them after they've won 2 national championships in a row? Georgia's not coming off the mountaintop in 2024. Georgia is finding a way to get back to the top of the SEC and finding a way to get back on top of the college football world. The fact that there's not that complacency built in, Jake Rowe said it perfectly, that's like organic fertilizer to make this whole thing grow. We have not seen, I don't believe, a coach outside of Nick Saban that is as good as Kirby Smart at putting a mission in front of his team and allowing them to play their best football. We saw it multiple times last year. After Auburn, Georgia went on a tear. After Alabama, I understand Florida State, they were nowhere near full strength. Georgia was still very much so clearly on a mission in that game. I think those two situations are microcosms of the mindset Georgia has heading into 2024. They are on a mission. They understand they don't have the crown right now. They understand they're not at the top of the college football world right now. And Kirby Smart is using that to his advantage and causing that to be kind of the fuel for this team when it comes to this upcoming season. Because there is some questions around Georgia. And I think the major questions most folks have is, okay, well, they lose a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think anybody's going so far as to question if they're going to be good on defense. But they do look at that defense and say, okay, well, you only bring back right around half of that production from last year's team. I think questioning Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann and their defense, or having any kind of uncertainty about them from the outside looking in, is a lot like questioning a grill master's ribs. Like, that's what they do. Like, Kirby Smart, yes, he is going to have a solid offensive unit. We've seen that now for a couple of different years. But Kirby Smart is from the defensive side of the ball. That's what he's come up doing. That's what he played as a player. He is going to make sure that that side of the ball is on their P's and Q's all the way through the line. The path for Georgia in 2024 is different than previous seasons. There's no way around that. Schedule changes a little bit with the new SEC, and they got to go to Texas. But, like, I really believe that this path in 2024 forward for Georgia favors the Dogs. They look at what they have in terms of their toughest games. Yes, they got to go to Bama at the end of September. They go to Texas October 19th. But from November forward, like, yes, you got to play Ole Miss, but, like, their 2 toughest games, in my opinion, hit during or before, like, that midway point during the season. I suppose Texas is the 7th game they play, I believe, if I'm not off on that. A little bit past halfway point, might not be the game 7. They can lose both those games, just so we're on the same page. Go 10-2, make the college football playoff. Let's roll. The other part of this, too, the fact they could lose a game and still make the college football playoff. They have a little bit of a get-right opportunity for themselves if they drop a game. That's something that didn't exist previously for Georgia. Like last year's a great example. You go undefeated during the regular season. You lose to Bama in the SEC title game. You missed the college football playoff. You had zero margin for error. That was obvious. Now, with that being said, this upcoming season, Georgia can drop a game, and Georgia losing a game, I've said this many times, they treat losing a game a lot like smelling salts. Like some teams, they lose a game and they get a little bit down on themselves. It breaks apart in the locker room. They start to question themselves. Georgia loses a game and it's like, whoa, we're awake. Okay, we're up, we're rolling. That is Georgia, and that's who they're going to be in 2024. So going back to this path, toughest games are early, have a chance to get right. Let's just say Georgia goes to Atlanta, and let's say they somehow lose the SEC championship game and they have to play in the first round of the college football playoff. They have 2 weeks to, 1, get healthy, most importantly, and 2, prepare. Put together a game plan. Kirby Smart gets in the lab with his staff. Usually you give Kirby extended time to prepare for your team. That's not good for the other team. And that's just assuming that they end up having the least amount of time to prepare. Let's go ahead and say Georgia wins the SEC. They won't play a game for 3 to 3.5 weeks. Let's say they miss the SEC title game overall and they have to play in round 1. Well, then they'll be done by November and be playing again at the end of December. See what I'm saying here? Like the fact that Georgia has so much time to reset from the regular season or the SEC title game, any way you slice it, nobody wants to see Georgia in a 12-team playoff. They're too deep. They prepare too well. They're too well coached. They have too much talent. Like all these things in my mind stack up to where I'm like, man, if you're going to take down Georgia, it's going to have to be the perfect matchups, the perfect storm. Have to have the perfect game plan. So all these things, I'm not saying that Georgia's going to win the national championship right now at least because we're sitting here in May and that would be irresponsible for us to do. But Georgia is just a different beast than they were previously. We're sounding the alarm. It feels like every week or so when it comes to talking about Georgia on this show. Like we are calling our shot. Georgia is going to be different than they have been in previous years. This path for them is different than it has been in previous years, and that favors them in a massive, massive way. Right now, they're the best team in college football for my money. We're going to do our post-spring college football playoff teams. Georgia will be number 1. Spoiler alert, Georgia will be number 1 when we do that ranking next week. So Georgia's different. The path is different. All those things favor Kirby Smart as if they needed any help at all. But it's the way it goes. Rich getting richer when you come to breaking down the path forward for them. Hey, appreciate everybody tuned in live. You could like the video. That would be tremendous. We would appreciate that greatly. Make sure you're locked in right there, and we will keep a good thing going. All right. So I put out a prompt on my Twitter page, and we've done this a few times this week. Y'all have responded in tremendous fashion, so thank you for that. Over 100 responses. Y'all have been killing it there. At JD Piquel is the handle if you want to follow me. Marcus Farrell responded to the prompt, which is, what is your preseason college football hill that you are willing to die on? And Marcus Farrell just says he thinks Florida State is underrated again. Now, is Florida State underrated? We'll discuss that right now. Make sure you subscribe to the On3 YouTube channel. Quick plug right now. If you're watching live, you probably hate when we do this, but we cut these as one-off clips, so we appreciate y'all being patient with us. But if you're watching on a one-off clip, this is from a live show. Okay, we do it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. We're on podcast, The Hard Counting with JD Piquel, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you're locked in. We don't want y'all to miss any of it, okay? This is kind of the time of the year where we're starting to peek over that hill and see college football on the other side. Don't wait till later to get dialed in. Be dialed in now. Stay ready. Don't have to get ready. Is Florida State underrated? Let's see what Vegas says. They put their win total for the year at over under 9.5 wins. Okay, so if you're a Florida State fan, you're saying, well, we went undefeated last year. Yeah, okay, over under 9.5. If you win 10 games, you're probably in the ACC title game. I don't think that's disrespectful for the most part. They have the best odds per FanDuel to win the ACC, and they have plus 154 odds to make the college football playoff. So not necessarily the best odds in the world to make the college football playoff, but plus 154 feels like those are, you got to feel pretty good about Florida State making the college football playoff if you're putting down that number in Vegas. So I don't know that I believe Florida State is being underrated, but I do think when you take a step back and you look at social media in the college football sphere, there is a little bit of this feeling, I think, if you're a Florida State fan, that maybe, just maybe, the Noles aren't being given all the respect in the world that maybe they deserve coming off of an undefeated season and winning the ACC. So if you're a Florida State fan, you're like, hey, what gives? We're the big dogs in the state. I mean, we're trusting the climb right now. You kidding me right now? You're going to talk some smack on Florida State after what we just did last year, after what Mike Norvell has proven he does in the portal? I hear you, but we got to understand now where the other viewpoint is coming from. Because if you're not a Florida State fan, or you're just a college football fan, period, the flyover take is, well, Florida State last year, a lot of those key pieces that made that undefeated season happen, they're no longer there. Jordan Travis, heart and soul of that team, he's gone to the league. Keon Coleman, one of the most dynamic offensive weapons in all of college football, gone to the league. 2 defensive linemen to the NFL, and Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. Like, they got a lot of pieces now they're having to replenish and replace. Florida State is 83rd in the country in returning production. So, by all accounts, it's a fairly new team in Tallahassee. So, again, the question is, a lot of new pieces. How do they fit? A lot of new transfers. How does it translate? And so that take, I think, in a vacuum makes sense. Usually when there's new pieces, especially when there are new pieces that are transferring in from another school, it's fair to have some hesitancy. But I think when we look at Mike Norvell, what he does works in the portal. And I'm not in the know enough into what goes on in that building. Like, I'm not sitting in the office with Mike Norvell watching tape and picking out who we want to have as our targets for the transfer portal. But it's very clear that the way that they approach the portal gets results. From evals to where to look, to how they utilize them in the offense, to how they acclimate them to the team, period. Like, all these things that Mike Norvell has in place, it works. And so when we have questions about guys transferring in, I think it's really fair for us to remember all the guys that have come to Florida State and flourished. Jared Verse was at Albany. Not saying Jared Verse wouldn't have been Jared Verse if he went somewhere else in a power conference, but the fact that he came to Florida State and got after it right away, like, you got to give some credit to Mike Norvell. Braden Fisk was playing in the MAC. Dude was tearing up Wednesday nights. Like, that was his deal. That was his stage. Comes to Tallahassee, now he's an NFL player. Keon Coleman, he was a dog in the Big Ten, came to Florida State, and I think made even more noise. So we have to understand now, we need to probably treat Mike Norvell with the portal a little bit differently than you would treat the average head coach in the portal. I'm not saying he's 100%, but he doesn't miss nearly as often as I would say maybe other coaches do. And that's not throwing shade at other coaches. If anything, it's trying to give Mike Norvell his flowers. There's this conversation around who's the portal king, Lane Kiffin or Mike Norvell. Can make an argument for both, but the fact that's even a label that you're talking about with Mike Norvell, we need to probably treat him a little bit differently. Because you look at the transfers and you look at this roster on paper, the feeling in Tallahassee is, yeah, we lost a lot, but internally, they feel like they have the best team, top to bottom, from a talent level that Mike Norvell has had since becoming the head coach at Florida State. That's saying something based on all the guys you lost last year. But you look at what they have from that spring game, and it's hard to argue. Patrick Payton, we know what he is. Marvin Jones Jr., transferring from Georgia, former 5-star. Just because you weren't the guy at Georgia doesn't mean you can't play ball. In fact, you have to feel pretty confident if you're a Florida State fan that he's going to translate pretty quickly to that defense based on how we look in the spring game. Darrell Jackson, excitement around him. Josh Farmer, excitement around him. Malik Benson has to be huge for them this year. You feel really good about what you heard out of the spring from what he's done over there at the wide receiver position for them in Tallahassee. Backfield is legitimately 3 players deep, if you ask me. Roydell Williams, you feel really excited about him at Florida State. So all these pieces on the paper, plus the benefit of the doubt with Mike Norvell, it's like, why can't Florida State go win the ACC? Why can't they go make a run at the college football playoff berth and maybe if they get in the dance, make something happen? And the key response you're getting back to that is, well, DJU, people remember what he did at Clemson or what he didn't do at Clemson. People remember the expectations for him. He's in Dr. Pepper commercials. He's supposed to be the guy, supposed to be the next one after Trevor Lawrence, and then he doesn't translate how you would hope he translate. And so I understand that. But I think what I just said a second ago has to also apply to DJU. If transfers come to Florida State and then have their best season of their career or give their career new life, why is DJ Uiagalelei the exception to that? And to be real here, like DJU doesn't necessarily have to leap tall buildings and lift cars to do what Jordan Travis did for this offense. And that's not me taking a shot at Jordan Travis. Again, he's the heart and soul of that team. You do not make the college football playoff. I'll rephrase that. You do not put yourself in position to be undefeated to make the college football playoff without Jordan Travis and what he did during the season. Just statistically, let's look at what he did. His best season, he threw for 24 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, right around 3,100 yards, and ran for 7 touchdowns. That was his best season at Florida State statistically. That was in 2022. In 2023, feel pretty confident in saying he would have surpassed those numbers or been pretty darn close to if he plays a full season, but that's what the numbers say. DJU's best season was 21 touchdowns, 7 picks. Okay, so 2 more picks, 3 less touchdowns. Had 1 less rushing touchdown with 6 and threw for 2,600 yards. So the biggest disparity there is just 500 less passing yards. Like all the other numbers are really fairly comparable when you look at those. So DJU, does he have to go out and win the Heisman Trophy for Florida State to win the ACC? I don't think so. I don't think that's what you need to win the ACC at all. I think if you're DJU, you just have to learn the system, get acclimated to everything around you, which is pretty obvious. Mike Norvell majors in allowing his transfers to do that, and then be able to get it to your playmakers and not give the ball to the other team, which sounds super simplistic, but I keep going back to this thought. We all want to judge DJU from what he didn't do at Clemson, totally disregarding the fact that maybe, just maybe, he has his best play caller of his career in Mike Norvell. He has the best roster on either side of the football around him as a whole, or at least as good. Why can't he go have his best season? Why can't he elevate Florida State? I don't see the logic behind that. So all things considered, I think Florida State and DJU are maybe a little bit underrated from the college football public. Vegas thinks they're going to win the ACC. More power to them. We'll give you our ACC predictions when we get closer to the season here, probably early August, maybe late July, depending on how we feel about that. But Florida State, man, they're going to be a problem once again. A lot of new pieces. There's no way around that. But if we know Mike Norvell and new pieces, usually those new pieces fit pretty comfortable and acclimate pretty quickly. So we appreciate Marcus for bringing the juice on that, man. Just bring it to the table, man. Bring it to the table. Give us your college football hill you're dying on. This is a judgment-free zone. We might disagree. We might have a different conversation around it, but this is a judgment-free zone. This is a safe place here on the Hard Count. We celebrate college football every single day, and we enjoy it just like y'all. So we appreciate y'all being a part of this whole thing. All right, let's keep on rolling here. Got Andy Staples joining the show in give or take 5-ish minutes, and we'll unpack the Brian Kelly remarks together. Again, very civil, very polite, very professional manner together. So that'll be a lot of fun. 2 opposing viewpoints, just talking ball on the air. How good can Tennessee be in 2024? Vegas has them at over under 9.5 wins. But with Nico Iamaleava entering into the fold in Knoxville, like this is the dude now, if you're a Tennessee fan, the minute he committed, you were saying, all right, Heisman Trophy, national championship, just wait till Nico takes the field. There's a lot of hype around Nico, a lot of hype around Tennessee this year. And honestly, I think a lot of it is warranted. If Nico Iamaleava translates to who Tennessee fans think he could be, to who we think he could be here at On 3, he was the number 1 player for us in the class of 2023, good things are going to happen in Knoxville. And I think the path to them reaching their potential really is, the foundation for that is in the first 4 games. The first 4 games, I believe, are crucial. You got Chattanooga, NC State in Charlotte, so it's a pseudo home game if you're NC State. You play Kent State. This is a big one here. At Oklahoma. Place will be rocking. I believe it's Oklahoma's first SEC game. The storylines are massive with Josh Heupel's return to Norman. Those things are all going to be swirling around that game. Those first 4 games, again, I think are huge in the sense that those are massive for getting Nico Iamaleava comfortable. Because as talented as he is, and he's talented. We went out to Knoxville and saw them in a spring practice. Got to watch the whole 2 hours. Dude has a cannon, freakish athlete, ball pops out of his hand. All those things are true. But it's still going to be his first time being the guy in the start of a college football season. His first time playing against SEC competition. Like, there's going to be, I think, a little bit of an acclimation period. It's fair to expect that. So during these first 4 games, yes, you try and get Nico comfortable. Yes, you try and get him confident. But I really need the defense, if I'm a Tennessee fan, to get dialed in. Got to get dialed in. James Pierce, There's a thought that you could be the best defensive player in the SEC, if not all of college football, depending on who you ask. Need to see that in the first 4 games. Need to be able to have Nico's back in the first 4 games so he doesn't feel like he's got to go out there, sling it, take chances, try to press the ball down the field if he doesn't have to. Let's just let the game come to him. Defense get some stops for those first 4 games and allow him to get confident, allow him to get comfortable. Those 2 things go hand in hand. The reason why that's important in those first 4 games is that's going to set the table and the trajectory for how you feel about the rest of your schedule. Like, let's just be real here. You view Arkansas and that game against Florida very, very differently sitting at 4-0 than you would at 2-2. Okay? Like, let's call a spade a spade. Also, for Nico, if he's able to be confident and be comfortable and you feel good as a staff giving him more on his plate, the offense can start to evolve. You can start to give him more runway, more opportunity to kind of make this offense more of his own and tailor it more and more to his skill set and expand on that and keep defenses off balance. So Nico is the most obvious, the most important hinge point for Tennessee football success in 2024. Now, with that being said, there's some other variables that we have to account for when we look at how Nico is going to play in 2024. Okay, there's a couple of different variables. I think the first is the offensive line, because there's some question marks there. Not that you don't have good pieces, not that they can't or won't be good, but I think you do have to protect him, give him time, because if Nico isn't able to go through his progressions, it doesn't matter how far you can throw it. It doesn't matter the way that the ball pops out of his hand. He's going to have to make rush decisions, and he won't be able to achieve his potential. Other part of this, the supporting cast for Nico has to be able to be better than they were last year. Like, I don't mean to be harsh, but, like, that's true. Joe Milton caught a lot of flack last year. He did. Some of that is he came into the season with sky-high expectations. Yours truly was a part of that. Some of that is because he was following in the footsteps of Hendon Hooker. Some of that is because of the bowl game he had. But at the end of the day, like, I think Joe Milton and what he didn't do for Tennessee in 2024, some of it's his fault. There's no way around that. But also, he didn't have a ton of extra help when it came to guys catching passes for him. Like, Squirrel White was his go-to guy, and outside of that, if you took away Squirrel White, was there anybody that really made you nervous last year if you're playing Tennessee? Anybody that really made you circle during the scouting report and say, hey, we got to make sure we take away this dude? It was 10, and then when Brew McCoy went down, I don't know who else you were really that concerned about. The system in itself, I think, is going to allow them to compensate a little bit for that offensive line because they're going to go quickly. Defenses are going to be gashed. They're going to be off balance. They're going to be on their heels with how quickly they go. But it's also, I think, going to play to the skill set of their wide receivers. Because when you go quickly and how much they spread defenses out, that creates a lot of one-on-one coverages. A lot of man-to-man and a lot of situations where, hey, the safety's not going to be able to get all the way over the top. So at the end of the day here, Dante Thornton, win. Chris Brazzell, win. Go win your one-on-one matchup. And if you do that, you're going to get the football. You're going to score a lot of points. So if I'm a Tennessee fan, in summary here, there's confidence around the defense. You feel good about Nico if you can support him accordingly. My thought process with how good can they really be if I'm a Tennessee fan is let's find a way to get to 10. So that means you can't drop any other game outside of Bama and outside of Georgia. And I understand if you're a Tennessee fan, you don't expect to drop any. More power to you. But if you can get to 10-2 and maybe, just maybe, if enough chaos happens, you can find the right version of 9-3, maybe you get into the dance. But that's my thought here. Just get us to December. Get us to the first round of the college football playoff. Because if you give Josh Heupel, same thing I said about Kirby Smart, you give him time to scheme for a team for an extended period of time, and you get healthy, and you get Tennessee kind of on a roll here offensively, when Tennessee is on offensively, all bets are off. Okay, like I think back to 2022 with the way that team was rolling and how good that they were offensively. I don't know that anybody wanted to see them in a 12-team playoff. Like Hendon Hooker and how dynamic he was and Jalen Hyde and how good he was downfield, they were explosive offensively. And so if they got into a track meet with you, you were not keeping up with them. So if Tennessee can get into the dance and get the right draw in the first round or two, things get a little bit interesting out there in Knoxville. So how good can they be? Remains to be seen, but my thought from a Tennessee fan is 9-3, 10-2, just get us to that, get us into the dance, and then we can make some things happen. So let me know on Instagram and on Twitter at JD Piquel how you feel about Tennessee long-term and what you think they're going to be when it comes to this 2024 season. All righty. Good to have y'all with us, man. Make sure you have subscribed to the channel. Make sure you've liked the video as well. Going to be joined by Andy Staples, hopefully here if tech keeps up with us in just a little bit. I understand some of y'all that are watching live on the YouTube feed, we were frozen. I'm looking at the picture now. It looks like we're back. It's live TV, baby. What are you going to do? Live YouTube TV. What can you say? All right, so again, hopefully getting Andy Staples on here in just a matter of a few moments. Make sure you get in the live chat. Let's go right now. Let's go to our rowback read for you here. So I'm going to go ahead and read that off, and we'll talk about that in a minute with Andy about LSU and what they could be here going forward. So, Hard Count is brought to you today by our friends over at Rowback. Now, Rowback is absolutely phenomenal, best in the game, and we're getting closer here now into summer season, a little bit hot. So with that being said, you don't want to sacrifice the way that you look just because the weather is getting warmer, right? So Rowback, they got the best polos in the game, moisture wicking technology, cool patterns, stretches really easily, really breathable. It's the way that you want to go about it. Also, Rowback has got some other items. I mean, I think they got shorts now. They got great joggers if you're lounging around the house. Like whatever you need for whatever situation you're in, Rowback has got you covered. All right, so Rowback also, food for thought here, they are crushing it in the NIL space, one of the leading brands in that space, if you ask me, when it comes to the athletes they have on their roster. Had Jalen Milroe last year, Cade Klubnik, Nick Singleton. Like they are one of the leaders in that industry. So this is the important part of this whole ad read because it relates to y'all being able to save some money. Go ahead and use code, I think it's, JD for 20% off your first purchase. That's not hard count, JD. Just J and D, no periods. Code JD for 20% off your first purchase at rowback.com. Save you some money. Look good. Good times roll. All right. Hey, for those of y'all that have hung with us through a little bit of tech here, just the way that it goes, man. A little bit of tornadoes in Tennessee. Some shows might pack it in, say, oh, you know what, we'll do it tomorrow. Nope. Blue collar, hard hat, lunch pail operation here on the Hard Count Nick break. Making it happen behind the scenes here. Hey, Nick, do we have Andy on? Is he in there for us? We got a thumbs up from Nick break. Let's rock and roll. All right. So there was a statement from Brian Kelly during an interview talking about what LSU does and doesn't do when it comes to NIL and the transfer portal. Andy and I, we disagree on this. That's more than okay. But Andy is joining the show now to unpack this together in a very civil, very polite debate, very helpful conversation to differentiating viewpoints. Andy, we got weather in Florida. We got weather in Tennessee. How are we living? Can you hear us okay?
You're going to be polite, JD, but yes, but like you guys have actual weather causing problems with your tech. I don't know what the hell happened. My show just went off the air today because the power just went out. Bright sunshine, power gone, done.
It is what it is. We're just making it happen. But you got back on the air. You weren't like, oh, we'll
came
pack
back
it in.
on. We powered through. We don't take days off here.
Run it back. Run it back. I love that. Okay, so I thought long and hard about how to intro into this segment. And I think the thought I had going into this is like we are not going to leave here with different viewpoints. Like we are not going to agree as we leave this conversation, which is more than okay. I want the people to be able to watch this clip so we have the proper context. Here's what Brian Kelly had to say about the transfer portal and NIL and what they maybe do or don't do when it comes to attracting certain talent in the portal.
The D-line, interior D lineman, where are you right now with that?
Well, I think I made it pretty clear in a number of the press conferences that I had that we were in the market in recruiting in the transfer portal looking for defensive linemen. It hasn't fared very well, quite frankly, because, you know, we're selling something a little bit differently, and that is we want to recruit. We want to engage, build relationships. We want to develop, retain, and have success. We're not in the market of buying players, and unfortunately, right now, you know, that's what some guys are looking for. They want to be bought. And look, I understand NIL is part of this, and we have an incredible collective. We have very, very generous opportunities around the greater Baton Rouge area for NIL opportunities. So they are here, but we're not going to go out and buy players. That's not what this is about. This was never about that. We will develop you. We will get you ready for the next step, as we did with Jaden Daniels, as we did with Malik Neighbors, as we did with Brian Thomas. We developed 3 defensive linemen that all got drafted this year. and we'll do that again. But if you're just looking to get paid, you're looking in the wrong place. If you like all the things that we do here in developing our players, bringing you into a championship program, playing in front of the best fan base in America, playing for championships, and having an opportunity for NIL, you should be a Tiger. But if you just want to get, paid, this is not the place for you.
Okay. So Brian Kelly saying we're not buying players. Again, we disagree here, but I listened to some of the things that you had to say on your show, Andy.
You said
I know
Brian Kelly's dropping bars like he didn't just pull something out of his banquet speech from the 2013 Notre Dame.
We don't disagree on a couple of things. LSU is well-resourced. LSU, I think, is playing the NIL game to a degree. Maybe they're not winning the NIL game. They're participating in NIL. They need defensive linemen. So we disagree, though. I want to hear your thoughts on what Brian Kelly had to say there.
Well, here's the thing. Like, he's not saying anything profound here. He's making an excuse for why they didn't sign any defensive linemen in the spring portal. And actually, if you keep watching the interview with Jacques Doucet, he then goes into the real reason why, and that's fine. They made an economic decision, which I actually agree with. But don't pull this, we're recruiting better human beings than the rest of you people. Like, no. You pay players just like everybody else does. These particular players you felt like cost too much based on what they were going to be able to give you. So you had Dominic Williams was in the portal. They brought him in for a visit. You had Simeon Barrow. There were a couple other guys that they were looking at. The supply of guys who played interior defensive line at a power conference level in the spring was so thin. And so the demand was through the roof. Texas needed him, Oklahoma needed him, Miami needed him, Auburn needed him. So the price was going to be obscenely high. And you had to decide, are you willing to pay that price? So what Brian Kelly is actually saying, and does say later in that interview, is we do buy players, but at the right price. So just say that first. Just say that first.
Sure.
It's okay. You're not hurting anybody's feelings here. Like, I don't think Dominic Williams is crying as he looks at whatever his bank account looks like now he's going to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's going to be sad about that.
Yeah. So
Brian Kelly in that interview says, how do I go to my offensive line, my bell cows? Yeah, Will Campbell and John Emery, the most important players on that team.
Right. So
they should make the most money on that team.
Yeah. No, without a doubt. Without a doubt. So the issue.
So
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, the issue is more just the way he said it and what he said, because it makes your collective sound broke, which it's not. We know it's not. And two, it makes it look like you're out of touch with how the game works right now.
Yeah, and so I think where we disagree is like the way it was received. Because I listened to this the first time on Twitter. I just heard that snippet, and I was like, okay, I'm okay with the idea that NIL isn't going to be the leading cause for you to sign with LSU. Now, it might be a very big factor. Like, you better come correct if you want to sign some of the top players in the portal. But if you're going to say, hey, we want you to come here, there is NIL. Now, at the same time, when you come to LSU, NIL might not be the only thing we're pitching you on. And if NIL is the only thing you're pitching on or you're deciding on, like, maybe this isn't the right spot for you. So I think for me, I was making the benefit of the doubt, like, all right, maybe I'm assuming LSU's playing ball because of the top 5 classes they have the last 2 recruiting cycles. Like, they're obviously playing ball to a degree. But like you said, if you don't want to hit that price point, all right, like, we'll walk away. And it's not a knock on Oklahoma either. Like, nobody's down on Oklahoma or Miami for landing portal guys. Like, good for them,
So here's my question to you, JD. If one of these defensive tackles had been like Jalen Carter quality, do you think they would have just bought him?
I think it would have been a conversation.
Because I think they would have.
I think I am willing to pay more for a Jalen Carter than I would a Dominic Williams, and that's not.
And that's where the argument falls apart. Like, it's not we want to develop, we want to do all the other things. It's we want the best players. We evaluated and decided we didn't think you were worth the price point.
Sure.
So you don't have to cloak it in this. We're recruiting great human beings who aren't about the money. Like, if you play like Jalen Carter, you can be about the money, and we'll buy you. Like, they all would. Hugh Freeze was in the same boat. Like, Hugh Freeze was on with Greg McElroy and Cole Kubelik yesterday, and he got asked about why they didn't go into the portal for a quarterback at Auburn. And he said, you know, I had to kind of weigh it. Do I want to try to develop the guys here, Peyton Thorne, Holden Griner, Walker White, or do we pay possibly $1 million for a guy in the portal? And Hugh said, I just like putting the pieces together better. Okay, I'm sure you do like developing quarterbacks. But if you thought old buddy in the transfer portal could get you into the playoff this year, you're paying that money. Like, if Dylan Gabriel wanted to come to Auburn, I guarantee you weren't worrying about who we're going to develop.
Yeah,
like,
I think that's totally fine.
So let's just have a more honest conversation about this. Like, NFL coaches can talk about this because they get asked about this every year after free agency and the draft. Like, why'd you attack this position this way instead of, you know, you decided to draft a 4th rounder instead of signing this free agent who is available? And they answer honestly. We have this much money to spend. We're trying to create the best roster we can and the most efficient method we can. That is exactly what the college coaches have to do now. And I get that they came up in an era where talking about this stuff was taboo, and acknowledging that you paid somebody the most is something, well, it would have got you in big trouble like 5 years ago.
Sure.
But we're in a different era now. It's okay to just be honest about this stuff. You don't have to pander to the yay amateurism crowd, because those people, their world is dead. Like, it's over.
And I think that's where it gets interesting to me is, if I'm Brian Kelly, like, I understand the thought of, well, hey, he's not totally being all the way forthcoming. Maybe he's kind of spinning this a certain way and he's cloaking it. And, like, my question after that is, like, who is he spinning it for? Because, like, the donors, they know how much money they have. They know where a certain price point meets for a kid. Like, the fans, is it that deep where Brian Kelly is worrying about the yay amateurism crowd? Like, I don't have a harder time getting on board with that. And when you look at, like, LSU overall here, I think it's okay to say we're going to be pro NIL. We would pay more for a Jalen Carter. Do not get it twisted. But part of our pitch is also, hey, we would probably pitch a little bit less than the next team because of we want to make sure that this part of our culture is staying intact. I think that's totally fine.
I just think you be honest about that. You don't default. And I don't think there's like a deep-seated reason for it. I think he probably defaulted to what would have worked throughout most of his coaching career. Like, that line would get a big round of applause on the banquet circuit in 2013 or in 2019 or in 2006 or whenever it was. So that's probably what happens. He just kind of defaulted to something, but it makes it look like you don't understand how the game works now. And then, like I said, you keep listening to the interview, he starts giving the real reasons. Just start with the real reasons. That's all you got to do. And I'm just trying to evolve the discourse here. Like, coaches, it's okay to pay them now. You don't have to pretend like you don't. It's not taboo. The NCAA is not going to come in and put you in jail. Like, you pay the players. You're buying players. And you can say that in our evaluation, we didn't think this was the most efficient use of our money.
Yeah,
like,
I think that's totally fair. Because that is what happened, right? I mean, that is, like, at the end of the day, hey, if you were Jalen Carter, yeah, we probably would have shelled out a few more dollars for you. Here's my question, Andy, because I think this is kind of the speaking to evolving the discourse. Like, because now the question is, well, if we attract a bunch of guys that are just after zeros and NIL is the end-all, be-all, I think most people don't know this for a fact, but we feel like that's probably not going to lend itself to the best culture. In your mind, how do you go about balancing culture when also you're trying to get the best possible and the demand is way up because the supply is way down?
Mm-hmm. That's why you still have to have your foundation in high school recruiting.
Yep.
And LSU does that, and Georgia does that, and Alabama does that, and Ohio State does that. Like, that's why you still have – because while at the Big Ten and SEC level, you do see schools sometimes gambling on freshmen with NIL dollars, it's not to the extent that you're paying guys out of the transfer portal or guys who are already in a roster. And especially at the really good places, you can offer a little less to somebody coming out of high school, because that will actually give you a chance to test that theory. Like, what are they about? Because like you said, if you have a full team of biggest bag guys, well, how'd that work out for Texas A&M? It didn't work out very well.
Yeah.
So you do need to find that balance. Like, you probably do need some guys who are really good who just want the biggest bag, but they're also really good. But yeah, you need some team guys. You need some I want to be developed guys. And I think the easiest way to do that is get them out of high school, because once they're in the portal, the market is much more clear.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the bigger issue. Like, if you're an LSU fan, the thing you're more concerned about than any of the words that come out of Brian Kelly's mouth, you're concerned about the defensive tackle situation this year. They're pretty thin. They lost Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo, who, given where they were drafted, could you have gotten them back? Maybe, but you didn't. You didn't have your defensive staff hired really in time for them to make that decision, and you didn't have your defensive staff hired in time to get guys out of the winter portal where the prices would have been lower. But also, it goes back to the class of 2023 when they signed 3 edge rushers, but they didn't sign any interior D-line guys. And I just don't think going forward at that level, at the LSU, Texas, Ohio State, Michigan type level, I don't think you can ever have a class again where you don't sign defensive tackles, or where you don't sign offensive guards, or you don't sign offensive tackles. Cody Belair was tweeting about this last night, our national scout who's worked in multiple personnel departments. And his thing is, he thinks you're going to see schools load up on the big guys out of high school from now on, taking more than they would have in previous eras, just because you got to hope you hit on some of those guys and you can retain them, because at least in the brief history of the NIL transfer portal era, we've seen that the big guys are not plentiful in the portal. You can't really change your fortunes on the line of scrimmage. Like, I don't know about you, JD. I'm going through in my mind all of the teams in the last few years. This year's Ole Miss feels like the only one that truly improved itself on the lines of scrimmage in the transfer portal. I can't really think of anybody. Like Michigan taking Olu Olutimi at center a couple of years ago, Ladarius Henderson last year to play left tackle. That was kind of like spot recruiting. But they already had a good offensive line both of those years. They didn't need, they hadn't gotten somebody out of the portal. They still would have had a good offensive line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't think you can completely overhaul. Yeah.
It's a fascinating time we're in right now, Andy, because I think, at the end of the day, you and I, we agree on this statement. If Brian Kelly just says, hey, he was worth more than what we were willing to pay, we don't even have this segment. You and I don't even get to jump on here and brave the elements to get this done. So, Andy, you got a really good article out on on3.com kind of unpacking more of this in totality. And I want you to know, too, I posted some stuff to the Ponderosa because I put my viewpoint on there. And obviously, it, is more pro LSU. So the LSU fans are like, yeah, get him. Get after Andy Staples. I want you to know, I went to war on the Ponderosa for you, brother. I was like, hey, Andy.
You don't have to.
But I do, because we're teammates.
You've already got
That's what good locker room glue guys do,
No, well, and that's the thing. Look, I know you're not all about the bag. I may be all about the bag. We haven't figured me out yet. I'm the new guy. I'm the free agent signee, or the transfer portal signee. But you don't have to do that, because we didn't do this. This isn't a bit. That's how you felt.
Yep.
That's how I felt. And I'm glad. I'm glad that we got to show everybody both sides of it. And the LSU fans are like, we love JD. He's the best. We hate Andy. He's the worst. Because
yeah, exactly.
It doesn't look like On3 is piling on them, or On3 is just caping for them. We're legitimately having a discussion about this.
100%.
And that's what this place is about. We think very deeply about college football, probably more deeply than a lot of people do, but it's what we love. And yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We'll have a situation probably. Let's wait a few months. They'll play games.
Oh, 100%.
There might be a situation where I say something that the LSU fans absolutely love, but you're like, no.
Yep. It's coming.
Dude.
It's coming.
And they'll hate you, and they'll forget that you said nice things. They'll forget that I said mean things. I'll be the greatest person ever. You'll be the worst person ever. Listen, I've had a lot of fan bases mad at me over a lot of years. They never remember any of the nice things. So just remember the next time you say something mean about LSU, no one will remember you said something nice this time.
I will never forget throughout the entirety of the Connor Stallion stuff. I'm like out there on one of the last guys on the branch. You might have been in the same category. I'm like, hey, listen, it's not that big a deal. Michigan's still Michigan. Like, I'm going to bat for Michigan. I picked Washington in the national title game. You and I are on the field. Confetti's falling. A Michigan fan who's probably overindulged a little bit beckons over to me and says, we remember you didn't pick him. Andy, you picked him. And I was like,
yes!
I was like, dude, really? Really? It's like, are we serious?
You're like, I was the last guy on the wall for like 2 months for you. And this is what you remember?
That was it, man. That was it. Well, Andy, I'm really glad we got to do this. I'm really glad we got to have a good discussion back and forth. Hopefully the internet is better for it, but we appreciate all your time. And stay safe out there in the elements.
My elements are fine, but you guys need to be careful. Thank you, JD. Anytime you need me, let me know.
Awesome. Andy Staples. Again, check out Andy Staples on the On3 YouTube channel. Best in the business. That's real life, too. I'm not just calling him the GOAT to just say he's the GOAT. Like, Andy Staples, been around the block a time or two. When he speaks, I would make sure we listen, regardless of what he says about your fan base. The guy's not shooting from the hip. Like he said, we got a lot of time to think about these things and give you an educated take, and Andy's as connected as anybody else in the industry. So with that being said, we appreciate Andy jumping on the show. And make sure that you check out his podcast, also on the On3 YouTube channel. They're live every single weekday in the morning. So lock in there. The college football fix you need right here on the On3 YouTube channel. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the show, and I think it's a fitting way for us to wrap up our Thursday show, our last live show of the week. I didn't go to journalism school. And I don't say that to like brag about it or to shame myself for it. Like, it's just the matter of the fact. I went to a major. I majored in hotel administration. So the correlation there is zero. I say all that because I never took a journalism ethics class or, hey, do this, don't do this when it comes to speaking on air. Like, I'm pretty sure, from what I understand, you're not supposed to have favorites. But again, we never took that class. So with that being said, my favorite players in college football, I'm about to list them out for you here. This is not an exhaustive list. This does not mean I hate your team if I don't mention your player. This just means these are players that I really enjoy watching them play the game of football, and I enjoy their stories too. First guy on this list for me, man, Ole Miss quarterback, Jackson Dart. Darty season out there in Oxford this upcoming season, baby. He's going to have a huge year. Mark my words. A lot of weapons around him. But the reasons why I love watching this dude play ball, he plays with reckless abandon. Throws his body around there when he runs the football. You will very rarely see him slide, much of the chagrin of Lane Kiffin. He's lowering that shoulder on the linebacker on 3rd and 2 to get the first down. And he plays with a lot of energy, a lot of passion. Also, like, dude's got some flow out the back of the helmet. All right, like, I respect anytime I see some lettuce flowing out of the bucket. Jackson Dart is first team all lettuce. Also, if you watch the cleat game for my guy, he's always rocking, whether it's some Jordan 1s, some Jordan 11s. Like, cleat game is kind of a new trend in college football, and Jackson Dart is at the top of the cleat game. Also, when it comes to his story at Ole Miss, it's hard not to like this guy. Like, he transferred from USC during that transition where Caleb Williams was going to eventually be the quarterback there, and everyone knew it. And he gets to Ole Miss, has a decent first year under Lane Kiffin, and then portal season comes around, and Ole Miss takes not one but 2 quarterbacks. I'm not tremendous with math, but I can understand that when you bring in 2 quarterbacks and you have one guy returning who was your starter, they brought those dudes in to try and push you and probably take your job. Jackson Dart is going to transfer, right? No, stays, wins the job, has a great year last year, and now Ole Miss is set up to make a college football playoff appearance. So Jackson Dart, one of my favorite players, the swag, the juice, his story, the way that he operates. Jackson Dart, one of our favorite players on this program. He is, in fact, a program guy. Another one of my favorite players in college football. This is a bad day to be a Colorado naysayer or an On3 JD naysayer saying we hate the Colorado program. We don't, first of all. Second of all, Travis Hunter is one of my favorite players in college football. He's a wide receiver, he's a defensive back, doesn't matter. He's going to get paid in the NFL to do one of those two, if not both. Travis Hunter is a one of one. We may not see anything like him in college football for the next 20 years, if ever, with how we're specializing positions right now. Dude had 3 interceptions on defense and then turns around and plays receiver. He got 5 touchdowns last year. Also, I love his loyalty, man. He committed to Deion Sanders at Jackson State, and then Deion Sanders takes the Colorado job. And there was a lot of buzz around Travis Hunter going somewhere else. You heard a number of different schools at a number of institutions that were more ready-made to win more football games than Colorado did last year. Travis Hunter says, nope, Deion's my guy. I'm staying with Coach Prime, transfers to Colorado, and is trusting that process that way. So Travis Hunter, without question, one of my favorite players. Love watching him play the game. I love his loyalty, and he's going to be fun to watch at the next level as well. So if we're a college football fan right now, enjoy Travis Hunter on your TV screens. Now, we couldn't do a favorite player segment without showing the big guys some love, man. Francis Mauigoa from Miami, the right tackle. People think about the offensive line, and they sort of consider them as a whole unit. You don't really watch the offensive line too frequently if you're just a college football fan watching your favorite team play. Francis Mauigoa makes offensive line play exciting. Not to say that it's not exciting already, but he puts a product on your television screen that makes you kind of get out of your chair a little bit. There was a play last year that went viral on Twitter. They're playing Louisville towards the end of the season at Miami, and it's a reverse. And so Francis Mauigoa blocks down for a second to fake the handoff to the left, peels off to the right, and he's got, I would assume, MDM. MDM means most dangerous man. And Francis Mauigoa sees a poor defender in his sights. And you could just tell, man, it was like National Geographic when a predator sees its prey, or it was like seeing a train and something's on the tracks. It was going to be a bad deal for that Louisville defender. Francis Mauigoa goes ahead and just unseats my man from where he was previously standing, plants him into the turf. I think that there's probably still a stain there in the turf. That's Louisville red. He's going to be a good one for a long time in college football. Probably going to be a really good one when it comes to the NFL as well. This is a receiver now that didn't get quite as much buzz as a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Keon Coleman or Malik Neighbors. Tetaroa McMillan from Arizona. Say that 5 times fast. He's from my area, Southern California. He did go to a rival high school. Never had to play him, thank the Lord. But I love the way that he plays the game. He's 6'5", 210 pounds. Dude is like smooth like jazz. I mean, he's R&B smooth when he plays the game. The way that he attacks the football in the air, could be one hand, could be 2 hands, doesn't matter. 90 catches for 10 touchdowns, over 1,400 yards. Just plays above the rim. When that ball's in the air, it is Tetaroa McMillan's ball or T-Mac's ball if you're just trying to save yourself some time there. He could have left Arizona. He could have. I mean, honestly, nobody would have blamed him. Not just because Jed Fish left and took the Washington job, but I mean, honestly, if you're Tetaroa McMillan, we all understand this. Now, tampering's a real thing. Coaches hit the DMs with these players all the time. I promise you, Tetaroa McMillan, if you were to look in his inbox, I have to believe there were some pretty big schools that would have liked to have his services and taken him to a, bigger school with Arizona at that time being in the Pac-12 and now being in the Big 12. Loved his loyalty. Loved the fact he's staying at Arizona. I'm sure that he was compensated more than accordingly for his services staying at Arizona, and good for him. Again, I don't know that. I'm just assuming this, kind of putting 2 and 2 together. One of my favorite players in college football. Going to be a stud this upcoming season yet again. One of the best in college football. Not a stretch saying that. Now, this is another one of my favorite players. Last one we'll talk about here. Carson Beck, the quarterback at Georgia. Yes, it's a big brand. Yes, he's a big name. Yes, a lot of people will have him as their Heisman pick to start the year. I think he's the Heisman favorite, actually, in Vegas. A lot to like about this dude. We talk about swag. It's important to us with favorite players on this show. Dude's tatted up. How many quarterbacks in college football do you see tatted up like my man? He's got like a tiger on his forearm. I think he might have something else on his leg. Like, he's got some swag to him now. He's driving, I think it's like a Lambo truck or something crazy like that. Dude's got a little bit of juice to him. And so he's got the juice, got the swag, but he's also, when you watch him play, you would have no idea that he's playing in front of 100,000, or if he was playing in the backyard, he's just calm demeanor, no expression, even keel, never too high, never too low. Really think that's just fun to watch with all the pressure he has on his shoulders. His senior day in Athens, when he runs out of that tunnel for the final time, it is going to be an absolute eruption from that stadium. Not just because he's had a great career, but because of how his career has went. He, to me, epitomizes what Georgia football is he also epitomizes, I think, what college football isn't right now. Carson Beck was a 4-star recruit. Carson Beck could have gone a lot of other places. Carson Beck could have transferred when it wasn't his time. Stetson Bennett has the show. Instead, he decides to stay, wait his turn, bide his time, buy into the process, and now he's reaping the rewards of it. And we love that for Carson Beck. We love that for Georgia. That's why he's one of my favorite players in all of college football, because he decided to stick it out, go the road less traveled, do the hard thing, and is now having a ton of success. More power to him. So, not an exhaustive list. If I didn't name a player from your team, I don't hate your players. I don't hate your team. Those are just some guys that I love watching strap it up on a Saturday afternoon and go get after it with their teammates. That's one of the things that we love about college football, man. Yes, the pageantry. Yes, the tradition. Yes, the communal aspect. But the fact that we actually got these students, I'm going to say student athletes because that's still a term that I guess we need to use for these guys. I mean, they're athletes. They're ballers. They're getting their NIL bags and good for them. But their stories and the way they've gone about it and how they play on the field, man. Some of my favorites. Not all exhaustive, not all encompassing, but some of my favorites. So we had a little bit of tech issues today, and we're going along a little bit long already. So you know what? We're going to get to our Q&A next Tuesday. Typically right now we go to the live chat. We'd hear from y'all. We'd have a good time. We typically do that, but we've already gone like over an hour, 10 minutes. And it's May, dude. It's the month of May. We're talking college football for over an hour. Y'all make that possible. Y'all tuning in, y'all subscribing, y'all commenting, y'all getting back and forth on me on the message boards, on Twitter, on Instagram, all those things. We appreciate y'all making it what it is. So subscribe to this channel. We are back on the air on Tuesday. Now, with that being said, if you're subscribed, you're going to see all the content. So there's some stuff we do on the YouTube channel that doesn't appear on the live show. If you're subscribed, you won't miss any of it. So follow on all the socials at JD Paquel. I want to hear from y'all. Give me your college football takes, your questions, all those things. Y'all are what makes this show special. Y'all are what makes this show different. All right, we got a camera. We got a mic. We didn't always have this. Y'all have allowed us to have this, and this is something we're very grateful to do for a profession. We don't take it for granted for a second. Not for a second, I promise you that. We could get sappy. We'll probably get sappy when we get closer to the season. But with that being said, we love y'all. We appreciate y'all. We are going to keep this party rolling. Nick Brake making the show happen. We will see y'all next time.